There's a pretty big bug happening for some people in The Sims 4, so I wanted to make a dedicated video about it. The best practices to try to use to try and reduce your chances of running into this bug, because it does basically make some save files completely unplayable. Now, this has been around for 10 years, but it's definitely exasperated by different things. For Rent, currently seems to be the biggest exasperation of this bug, and it is the error 800 or the error 801, which basically leads to your saves starting to disintegrate itself. Lots start to get deleted. I've seen some people mention that items have been disappearing from their houses, families have been disappearing. You also get endless loading screens and load into empty lots. Unfortunately, this hasn't really been spoken about on the upcoming laundry list, and I think it is probably because there is a wide variety of things that could potentially cause this, and currently it is under investigation over on the forums, so I think they are trying to get to the bottom of this and see if they can sort it out, but I don't think they really want to promise anything right now. However, I do kind of think it should have been mentioned, considering it is fully making saves unplayable for some players. And unfortunately, those of us with legacies or saves that have been going for a very long time, I personally feel are more at risk of this because of the save file sizes. Now, the EA forums really aren't my favorite place to hang out on the internet. I'm not a big forum fan in general. I never really grew up looking at forums. I find them confusing. I find it really, really hard to find bugs that you're actually being affected by. I just don't think it's the most accessible way for players to be able to report bugs. The most I ever really do is Me Too stuff, and then if there is a bug that I run into that they actually need save files for, sometimes I will attempt to upload my save files so that they can have a look at it. But I am going to use the EA forums because Kryn has actually been talking about this a lot over on the forums. I'm also going to leave a link to these posts down below, so if you are noticing your game or save file being affected by this error, you can go check this out. You can go follow the steps. Unfortunately, it does seem once a save is corrupted, there's not a lot that you can do to stop the corruption from happening. When trying to load into a lot, you are greeted by error 800 or 801, buildings start to disappear, and you also get endless loading. But if we actually follow this second link here, it will lead you over to this page, which is important info, and the threads linked below are being actively investigated, so you can follow those for updates. Kryn has basically gone through and separated the threads out because they're trying to track where this is actually coming from. Bloody hell, this website has a mind of its own. So if you have a white screen after loading into a world with a residential rental, please use this thread. If your save is corrupting and you have a lot of residential rentals, please use this. If you get load error 800 or 801, use this. If your game shows all the neighboring lots as default/empty instead of the correct lot, use this. If you download a lot from the gallery that gives you an endless loading or crashing when leaving the lot or trying to load into it, use this. And if buildings are disappearing, you have exclamation marks or llamas on the map, or houses are different on the map and in the game, even after loading into the lot, please use this. Really hard to pinpoint, but there are a few things that can accelerate the issue. So these are kind of suggestions and a preventative measure to try not to actually have this save corruption happen if you haven't noticed it already. But you do think you may potentially be at risk because you have multiple residential rentals, or you have a big save file size, or stuff kind of cluttering up your saves, which isn't so good for me as a person who currently has a short lifespan legacy going on, and then who also is doing an all collections challenge, because both of those things can actually bloat saves. It's not mod caused, so don't think that this is an issue with mods. However, it can be influenced by mods or cheats, especially if you create lots of residential rentals units in your save game. So if you are building, if you have a lot of families in residential rentals, obviously that increases the amount of Sims that are living in your world, and that can definitely accelerate the issue. Save game size. The issue usually happens on larger save games. A few factors that contribute to the save game size that you can keep an eye on. Lots of big houses with a lot of objects on them. Try to keep the size of the houses down and the number of items that you have on a lot. Consider using empty houses for set decoration if you don't play certain lots but want houses to make it look nicer. Photo sims take in game. So I've seen people talking about actually taking your screenshots folder out of your Sims 4 file, which I don't think is a bad thing for people to mention. Like, you want to also have a backup of those screenshots. You want to have those memories if you are a person who cares about screenshots. So definitely back that up, and if you're comfortable with having them on like a different drive. However, it doesn't seem to actually fully affect this, and I'm saying that as someone who has 28 gigabytes currently of screenshots. I haven't wiped my screenshots folder since Cottage Living came out. So I definitely need to get on like going through all of my Sims files and sorting those out and prioritizing them and taking stuff out, moving stuff around. However, this means the photos that you physically take in the game as a Sim using a phone camera, a regular camera, obviously they can bloat your inventory, which they have mentioned having more stuff in your Sims inventory can add to a save file size. But if you have an awful lot of photos in your Sims inventory up on their walls, they say try to only keep the photos you really like and contribute to your gameplay. Delete everything else. And then also lots of Sims. The game creates Sims an abundance. Delete the ones you don't use from time to time. Now, naturally, I think the game does this anyway. There is actually a culling system in The Sims 4. I actually went in and changed one of my options in the game, which I will get into. But you can obviously delete households in Manage Worlds. And definitely think about doing this if you've specifically turned off culling, because I know that's an option within MC Command Center, and I know that some people have turned off in-game culling. I personally would keep that on just for your own benefit so that your saves aren't getting bloated with a bunch of Sims that you actually don't ever interact with. Usually there's nothing you can do once it starts happening. So again, these are all preventative measures if you know you have legacies that you really care about, or big save files in the grand scheme of things. If you have a lot of stuff on your Sims lot in their inventories, if you have big houses with lots of like clutter in them, definitely try and cut back on those as much as you possibly can. Which I know we shouldn't have to do all of these loopholes. A save file shouldn't be eating itself at the end of the day, especially save files that are years and years old that people very much care about. But unfortunately for right now, these are the procedures that we can go through to actually try and prevent this from happening. But of course, at the end of the day, we would just want it to be fixed. It definitely seems to be happening most frequently with people who have a lot of residential rental units. And like I said, that's probably because you have different families living in there. There's more people actually living in the world, which is why For Rent has been such an issue. It's one of the buggiest packs we've ever received next to My Wedding Stories. And it absolutely sucks that a year down the line since it actually coming out, we are still facing these really big issues when it comes to For Rent. So if you're not too fussed about those residential rentals, if you're not really playing with many of the families in them and you're kind of just using them for stories, I would suggest getting rid of them in your game for now. I do think that they are one of the biggest influences of having this affect your save files. So I would personally just delete all the residential rentals in your game, which I know, again, you shouldn't have to do for a paid product that you've had for over a year now. Whilst this has been happening more, and obviously more people are talking about it, even though it's been a thing for the last 10 years, I also think it has a lot of attention right now because we have seen that the brand new expansion pack, which is businesses and hobbies, sort of lends itself to the same programming that For Rent used. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, I hope this new expansion doesn't bring all the issues that For Rent Prevent did, because it kind of goes off the same system of being able to like split up a lot. And I think a lot of people are drawing comparisons because of the borders that have been shown where you can choose employee only, business, or then residential. I personally don't think that's going to have as much of an effect because it's not actually generating households. You're not actually moving Sims into those businesses. It just goes off the amount of Sims that you already have in your save. It's not like it's adding families. It's not moving anyone else into your worlds. Those businesses you can't live in. Like, it's not a residential rental in that sense. So I'm maybe stupidly optimistically saying I don't think this will actually exasperate it, the new expansion. That's not to say the expansion is probably going to release without any bugs, because unfortunately, at this point in time, it feels like many games release unfinished and also with a bunch of bugs that they just hope they can patch up like in the next couple of years. But with For Rent, that hasn't been the case. I personally just wish that they released it with the least amount of bugs possible. Just to show you what I've actually done, I've not removed my residential rentals yet. I'm actually going to wait for my last legacy heir to pass away, and then I think I'm just going to sell the business. Like, I'm not fussed about having residential rentals. I was using it for a very specific storyline in one of my generations, so I am actually able to just delete those residential rentals without it having too much of an effect on my game. But what I did do is I went into manage households. I went into other households. If there are households that you are kind of worried about losing, I personally would add them into your like own households. It just adds, I feel, a little bit of a safety net, and they're not actually gonna be at risk from being called, I don't think, from your households tab. The next thing I would recommend, I actually had this set to unlimited, but this is actually the maximum recommended. So I've gone back and set it to 200. I don't know why it says sim count 10 out of 200. I don't know what sims it actually counts towards it. I feel like there's definitely more than 200 sims currently in this save file, so that's definitely my bad for having that set to unlimited, but I've put it back on max recommended 200, just the maximum sim count for this game save, just so it's not bloating it too much. However, I have also gone through and really like single sim households that I don't really have much interest like interacting with my current household, I will just delete. I've already gone through and deleted some of them, but say for example, if I knew that I wasn't really going to interact with this sim, I could just click on the household and delete household. These are a bunch of sims who aren't currently in the world. It's just kind of the townies that your game generates, and if you don't see any reason to have them, then I would straight up just delete them from your world. Again, not adding to the amount of sims that live in it, and therefore not bloating your save file. I would definitely go through and save the households that are in your my households, or any households that your sim are like friends with. Save them to your gallery, save all the lots to your gallery. So for example, I would save this apartment to my gallery, and then I know I have some sims in Sulani, so I would save this house and also this family. I would save the legacy mausoleum to my gallery, and then anyone I was currently romancing or anything of that nature, because if they're actually saved to your gallery, saved to your library, then you can always go into a new save and kind of build up that save to kind of represent your old save if it does happen to get corrupted. The only thing is, I don't think that family trees get carried over to new saves, so for legacy players you would definitely be missing out on that. But I know that a lot of legacy players already have like issues when it comes to family trees because they get too big for the game to kind of handle anyway, and they can get cooled, and therefore it gets messy, and obviously all the townies will kind of reset, so you won't be at the specific like point in your save that it feels like you should be in. But I mean, starting anew, if the corruption sim does happen is one of your only ways to actually continue playing that save. Again, I don't agree that that should have to be a thing. I don't think players should like have to feel the risk of losing save files, but unfortunately that's where we're at right now. So I just wanted to give a couple of suggestions that could maybe give you workarounds, especially if you do start to notice buildings disappearing or sims disappearing or items disappearing. From what I've read online, a lot of people have said that Willow Creek starts to disintegrate first. So maybe just like every so often, keep checking back into Willow Creek, check out a couple of the lots, like try and play in a couple of the lots just to see if your game is still functioning on the surface. But also thank you to that one awkward simmer. I actually mentioned this in a video a few days ago because I didn't want to talk about a new pack without staring these like glaringly obvious bugs in the face and just be like, oh, new pack hype. But you know, some people's saves are eating themselves. Who did actually comment on that video just to also give a quick list of what to do to try and minimize the chances. Again, try not to keep too many pictures that your sim takes. If using residential rentals, avoid the cheat that increases the capacity. So don't go above the limit of 6. I know a lot of people were doing that when the pack first came out. Try not to do that. Obviously, it's very much going to overwhelm your game. I did it for one video where I tested it out and it didn't work well anyway. So really there's not much point doing it because your game just starts to like lag out. Don't keep too many unused mansions full of clutter in the save file. Extra stuff might gunk it up. Pull random unused sims when you need to. And tragically, I know a lot of builders are not going to be happy about this, but try to limit clutter. Keep lots around 2 to 3 levels max. I found more than that also bugs out after a while. So I'm sorry that you lot kind of have to limit and kind of prepare yourself for the worst case scenario, but that's why I wanted to make this video. I wanted to make you aware of this happening. I also didn't want to use like scare tactics because I know that there is like a lot of information out there when it comes to very serious bugs like this. And I do think it's good to be cautious about things. I think it's good to be in the know about what can actually cause these issues so that you can try and prevent it. But I also didn't want to cause panic, which is why I kind of took my time to like go through and see what people were suggesting and how this was actually happening. But like I said, it is still being looked at and it's being investigated because it does seem to be caused by like multiple pieces. Hopefully they can figure this out soon. Honestly, I just want for rent to be fixed. People have also said try just disabling for rent. Again, you shouldn't have to do that for a pack that you've paid money for. At this point, I don't think refunds are really out of the question. What, a year down the line and this pack still causing major issues? I do personally think that refunds should be offered and people can give that pack back. But unfortunately, that's not the case right now. But thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope I didn't worry you too much. I hope this video was actually like helpful and maybe slightly reassuring for how you could potentially avoid this corruption. Thank you all so much for tuning in and I will speak to you all in my next one. Bye now.